Welcome to another episode of Seeing Them Live, a podcast featuring memorable concert stories from live music fans. Everyone has a concert story, and hopefully, one day, we'll hear yours.
We were a band very big on theatrics, and we never set out to be a quote-unquote steampunk band, but there's a huge fandom for that stuff, and we ended up headlining a bunch of conventions and things like that, which was just awesome. I'd never felt so famous in my life sometimes playing at those things.
My guest today is TJ Horn. TJ is a Boston area drummer who has played with several bands, including the critically acclaimed Walter Sickert and the Army of Broken Toys. He's also an avid live music fan, and in 2025, he set a personal record by attending 75 concerts in a single year. TJ also performs live readings of erotic fan fiction. TJ, welcome to Seeing Them Live.
Thank you so much for having me up.
Yeah, this is great. And yeah, like we were just talking, we'll start with your concerts first and then get into some of these bands you were in. Your first concert, which you put down as Depeche Mode, and in that documentary, I was reading that that's one of your influences as well, or was, with among many other bands you cite. But so that must have carried to this day even influence on you by seeing them. This was 1994. You were 13 years old, and like all kids, 9 times out of 10, it's their mom who takes them to their first concert if they can't drive. So yeah, why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Actually, looking back on the date now, I was actually 12 at that concert. But yeah, my mom listened to like just a lot of just whatever top 40 stuff. I remember her like spinning like Cyndi Lauper records, and I remember like when Salt and Pepper first came out, she was really into them. But I had an uncle who was only like 10 years older than me, and he was into like, alternative or counterculture type stuff. So he suggested we all go to Depeche Mode. My mom loved, Enjoy the Silence, because that was a big, like, top 40 radio hit. And, we all just went. It was me, him, my mom, and my sister all went to that concert. And from that day forward, I've been obsessed with live music, and I really clung to Depeche Mode after that as well. And to this day, they're still my all-time favorite band.
Yeah. And so was this... this was at the Blockbuster Pavilion. So is that like kind of like a band shell kind of thing?
Yeah, it's one of those like big outdoor pavilions, probably has like 10,000 capacity or something like that. It's kind of awesome because it's set in the mountains between like the high desert and like the Los Angeles area. So it's literally like overlooking a mountain pass. So yeah, it's just added more, I think, to my love of live music, as my first couple of concerts were at that venue, and just having that beautiful scenic backdrop and, being up elevated in the mountains a little bit. It was actually, you get to wear a hoodie instead of just burning to death in the desert all day.
Yeah, because I looked up, this place is in Glen Helen, California.
Yeah, and I think it still exists today, but it's probably, the Verizon, Comcast, Disney, Warner Brothers, whatever.
Yeah.
But back then it was the Blockbuster Video Pavilion,
Yeah. Yeah, and they're obviously, those guys are long gone. Them and their late fees, right?
Yeah.
Well, so were you guys like on the lawn or something? Did you have seats?
We actually had seats. We were a lot further back, closer to the lawn section. I do have another fun story about that lawn section involving my early years of concert going. But yeah, we were towards the back. We had seats, so it was a little bit spoiled. But, that was also back in the day when you could get up and, go wait at Tower Records at 8 a.m. for tickets to go on sale. And it was just first come, first serve. Front row was the same price as back row. And, maybe the lawn was like $10 cheaper.
So you, like you said, you went there several times, and you had another story about being on the lawn of that place?
Yeah. I saw Metallica also in 1994 with Suicidal Tendencies and Fight, which was a thrash band that Rob Halford had at the time. So being up in that lawn section, that was the first time I saw some like serious kind of scary moshing for suicidal tendencies. But once again, I think I was either 12 or 13 at that time. And I remember just being so curious about it and being like frightened, but still curious enough to get along the edges of the mosh pit to watch it and everything.
And I've said before, like once you kind of go into the mosh pit, you kind of know, at least myself, like who to stay away from.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, that you know, people who are in there for whatever reasons.
Yeah, it definitely was.
So if you want to move on to your best concert, and I know we're thinking of changing this category actually, because you're not the first person who like, I don't know, I can't pick my best concert. There's so many of them. So, you know, we're thinking of maybe changing it to like most important concert or something like that. But even then, it'd probably be hard to do. But if you had to say Lollapalooza 1994,
Yes.
I looked on the lineup. This was online. The main stage lineup was like Smashing Pumpkins, Beastie Boys, George Clinton, The Breeders, A Tribe Called Quest, Nick Cave, and L7. And then also as add-ons, depending on what date you attended, were the Boredoms between July 7th and August 3rd, and Green Day August 5th through September 5th. And I was wondering, is that accurate? Or did you see Green Day? Was Green Day there when you were there?
Yeah, so I showed up maybe during their last song. I was kind of entering the actual venue. It's kind of a weird venue. It's I saw them at San Diego State University's Aztec Bowl. Um, so it was like it was a stadium and everything. So like I'd been on the grounds by the time Green Day was playing, but I missed most of their set. Um, and I was actually talking to a friend about this recently, how quickly they got famous because they were like the first band on that bill that day. And I had moved to Boston from California a month later in September, and there was a massive riot here because they did a free show in downtown Boston. And then like a couple of days or weeks later, they were like one of the headliners on Woodstock 94. So like just in that month was how fast they went from being like nobodies to headlining these major events.
Yeah. So, I mean, did you go there to see a band in particular that interests you?
So mostly at that show, I was legit there for everybody. I didn't know very many of the bands on the second stage. I can recall seeing Stereolab and Shonen Knife on the second stage, who I ended up, buying both of their cassette tapes after that. Um, but yeah, I literally, I just wanted everything. I was 13 years old. Just wanted to consume as much alternative and counterculture music as possible. And, even back then, obviously I knew like George Clinton's We Got the Funk or whatever, but like, there was that thing in my head that he had produced a Red Hot Chili Peppers record. So it was like, oh, that guy's cool because he produced the Chili Peppers. And like, I knew Nick Cave was a little bit like goth. So I wanted to see him be spooky. And the Breeders unfortunately somebody like threw a bottle on stage and I think like injured Kim Deal. So they only got through like one or two songs.
Man, these.
Yeah, it was a wild show. And like I can remember being mostly excited about seeing L7 and the Beastie Boys, which the RT to Jennifer Finch from L7 just passed away like yesterday, I think.
Yes, terrible news.
So yeah, the Beastie Boys were kind of life-changing for me because at that time they had a full band and were also all performing on instruments instead of just being three guys on stage with a turntable. So that kind of opened my mind to a little more hip hop back in those days too.
And were you guys like on the lawn? Did you have seats?
It was general admission. I remember being kind of off on the sidelines for most of the show. And I also remember back in the day too, it was just everyone was so hyped. Like people were moshing for like Nick Cave, which it was just slam dancing for anything. And then I did get up front for the Smashing Pumpkins, and it got so just people kind of pushing and shoving. And like I remember my uncle's friend like passed out from just being squished so much. And I was so little at the time. I ended up getting pulled out by the bouncers over the barricade, and I went to the back of the venue and finished the show from the back.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So you went with your uncle again.
Yeah, he played a big part in I mean, so I guess in the year 1994, he played a big part in my, going to concerts and things like that. 'Cause he also took me and my sister to see Nine Inch Nails on the Downward Spiral tour. He also took me to like local DIY punk shows and things like that. So if there were any other concerts, he's the one that took me to Metallica. So yeah.
The cool uncle.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice. Always good to have one of those. Did you have any other best concerts that you wanted to talk about, TJ? Like other ones that kind of rank up there or that come to mind?
I go to so many. One I can think of very recently that I went to that I was very surprised by is this artist from Spain named Rosalia.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know like too many of her songs, but like, I don't know. I just hopped on StubHub and there were some cheap tickets and I really wanted to go to a show that night. So I went to see her at the Boston Garden and it was one of the most amazing shows I've ever seen in my life. She did a lot of songs, in her native Spanish, but she was also singing in like Arabic and Italian, and there was an entire orchestra on the floor of the Boston Garden, and she had a stage going on. So yeah, that was a cool show. And I'm just trying to think over the years. Another important show for me was seeing the punk band Face to Face in Southern California. That was the first sort of DIY punk show I went to, and I remember going to that show and just thinking in my brain, seeing these guys, like, pull up in their beat up Toyotas, lugging their own gear out, and I'm thinking in my head, like, "Wait, why don't these guys have limos, and where's their tour bus, and why is there not roadies helping them set up, and why are they shaking everyone's hand in the crowd? And why are they selling their own merchandise?" And it was kind of at that moment that I realized, like, oh, you don't have to be a big star to be a successful musician. So that was a show that kind of made me fall in love with smaller, DIY punk and hardcore bands and things like that. And I learned that just almost anyone could, call up a VFW and rent a VFW and say, "Hey, I'm going to put 6 bands on, charge $5 a head."
Yeah. Any place is a venue, especially if you don't sell alcohol and stuff like that. It really opens up possibilities
Right.
for where bands can play and who can attend.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I thought we would move to most surprising. You put down this Ozzfest show, 1998, and I've got the lineup here. So it was Ozzy Osbourne was the headliner, obviously. Tool, Limp Bizkit, Soulfly, Dust, Coal Chamber, and Motorhead. I don't know how accurate that is, but that's what I found online.
Yeah. Motorhead was on the second stage for some reason at that too. Um, but yeah, that show became very surprising to me because after Limp Bizkit was pretty big at the time. And this again was at one of those pavilion type venues that, has seating and a lawn and everything. And for whatever reason at Ozzfest, the seating wouldn't fill up until Ozzy came out. And it would just be like a smattering of people, and the lawn section would just be packed full of people moshing and stuff. So right after I had a seat, and right after Limp Bizkit played, Tool was setting up, and Fred Durst there were so many empty seats, he just came and sat right next to me and was like, "Hey, bud, how'd you like the show?" I was like, "Well, what are you doing just sitting there?" He's like, "Watch Tool, brother." Like, all right. And they had covered like Ministry at that show, and I want to say they covered a Suicidal Tendencies song too. So I kind of just music nerd got to talking to him about Ministry, and how much of a Ministry fan I am, a Nin fan, and now Depeche Mode's my favorite band. And then we got into this long conversation about Depeche Mode, and yeah, I just learned about how much of a music and film geek that guy was. We just really got into a nerdy conversation, and the only reason it got cut short is because Tool came out and started playing. So we had a good like 30, 40 minute conversation.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy, crazy, crazy. Wow. So you listed that as a pleasant surprise, and then you said you maybe might have some other one that were similar surprises like that.
Yeah, I mean, recently I was at a festival. There's a band called Touché Amoré that I really, really like. They're one of my favorite bands. And from the stage that night at the festival, they announced that they were playing at this tiny VFW type venue in Massachusetts the next day. And you had to go to this record store to get a bracelet for it. So I woke up and stood in the snow the next morning and was like the first person in line to get a bracelet. And yeah, they just did this intimate little show. And surprisingly, only like 40 people showed up. So it was fantastic. They just seemed like they were having the time of their lives. And yeah, they're a band that tours the world. I mean, their guitar player has designed like album covers for like Britney Spears and Lady Gaga and things like that. That's weird. They're kind of this like smaller, emo punk band, but they're like they were on like Jay-Z's management team for a while, and I think it's because of their guitar player's connections. Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, I love seeing bands when you can get lucky enough to a small little space. A couple years ago, we were at Lollapalooza, and we went into this tent that was sponsored by Toyota. It was like a tent. It was weird. There was a stage back there. It was tiny, tiny. And my sister was saying that there's this band called Bridget Calls Me Baby, and they're playing twice. And so therefore they must be good. We didn't know anything about them. They're from Chicago. And
Yeah.
and so we went in there, and yeah, we squeezed in because people kept kind of filtering in there. But
Right.
yeah, I mean, there might have been 150 people maybe under that tent. I don't know. It was a small tent, but that was really cool. Just totally unexpected. And then from there, we became fans. Seen that.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that those small venues are cool if you can catch the right situation and stuff.
Right. Yeah, years ago, there's a club in Boston called the Middle East.
Oh yeah, I've heard of that place.
Yeah, it's got like 4 venues in it. It's kind of like Boston's version of, I don't want to say CBGB because it's not that scuzzy, but it's maybe that legendary in Boston. But anyway, I went to see a band called Stella Star that I really liked. They were kind of like one-hit wonders in the early aughts, and the Killers were one of their openers. And like, nobody had really heard of them at the time. And
Wow.
upstairs that night at the other venue, like the Eagles of Death Metal were playing. So yeah, it was like I have that cool street cred to say that I saw the Killers open for somebody in a 500 capacity venue.
Yeah.
Also in that same venue, I saw the Deftones there. I saw like Less Than Jake, and these are all bands that play massive venues.
Yeah, I don't know if it's the same Lollapalooza or not, but the Deftones had played before the Killers at Lollapalooza.
Oh, wow.
Which was an interesting arrangement, but half the crowd probably cleared out after the Deftones.
Right.
Half more came in to see the Killers, but yeah, they're definitely played to bigger crowds now for sure.
If I could throw in one more cool surprise, we're on the Lollapalooza train here. I went to I'd moved out to California towards the end of '94, and I went back to visit some family in '95. And my dad actually took me and my sister to Lollapalooza '95, and a bunch of our kind of childhood friends also went. And it was at, again, one of these pavilion things, and there was a walkway between the lawn section and the seats, and Porno for Pyros randomly just like set up on the thoroughfare and just did an acoustic set randomly. It was such a surprise. And like that same day, I ended up meeting Justine from Elastica and Melissa Oftamar from Hole. Yeah, it was so wow.
That's something else.
Yeah.
Just the luck of the draw, I guess, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But if you go to enough shows, right, that happens at some point. And so if you'd wanted to transition TJ into this, you went to 75 shows in 2025,
Yes, sir.
which is a personal record, right?
Yes, definitely.
That's the most you've ever been to
In 1 year, yeah.
in 1 year. Because I think I told you in email, a friend of mine, we went to see 24 shows in 7 days.
That's insane.
It was very insane. Yeah, it was actually, I don't know. You could argue whether it was enjoyable or not. At some points it wasn't, but overall it was fun. But we had to plan and deal with weather and stuff. And so I'm like, wow, 75. Like, how did that all come about? I mean, were you like thinking, oh man, I'm going to a lot of shows this year. I wonder how many I've been to, or were you trying to go to more in 2025 than you had previously?
Not really. So, I like recently got divorced and just found myself kind of being more social, with people that I hadn't been social with in a very long time. And, all my friends like different types of music. Like I have one group of friends that loves hip hop. I have one group of friends that loves, you know, hardcore, punk, metal. I have another group of friends that likes pop and more indie stuff. And, so yeah, I just kind of found myself just saying yes to whatever if I had a free night. I worked my job shift is like 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. I also have a massive network of friends. So it's like there were some nights I would just pop on Instagram and in my inbox I'd see someone being like, "Oh man, I'm sick. I can't go to the show. Do you want tickets?" Yep. Um, I had one friend who had a friend who was like friends with Jack White's stage manager or something and gave her an unlimited guest list. So it was like a friend of a friend hooked it up. And now I've made more friends through that connection. And I have friends that work at venues that sometimes might have discounted tickets. There were some nights where I had zero plans and I just hopped on StubHub and said, "Oh my God, this band's playing for $10. Why not?" And, I have a lot of musician friends, so I went to see their shows. And yeah, I think it was more towards the end of the year that I started like being like, all right, let's see how many I can cram in by the end of the, it was by like October, November. Then I was just like, all right, I'm on a roll.
That's cool. Cause as far as like you said, seeing a band for $10, we noticed too, like we went to a lot of free things, sometimes like record release parties. They weren't charging a cover. If there were three bands and we walked in and the first two bands had already played, they're like, yeah, just go in.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it was relatively cheap, we weren't going to see like Bruce Springsteen or anything like that.
And that's the thing is like there were very few shows that I probably paid over $30 for if I paid for it at all.
Hi, this is Charles Zona, and we're glad you are enjoying this episode of Seeing Them Live. If you would like to be a guest on the podcast, please fill out the form on our website at seeingthemlive.com. Also, if you like the show, please give us a rating on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to your podcasts. And now, back to the show. Right. So that's interesting. So how's this year shaping up? Is it similar, you think?
Not as much as last year. Definitely haven't noticed as many freebies this year. So my wallet will only allow so much. Again, with my job schedule, I was very tired a lot last year. So I've been trying to be a little bit better about being like, you know what, I don't need to go to this one. But I do have a pretty full calendar for the next couple of months for sure.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's a great way to go about seeing some shows with friends and getting these deals last minute or, yeah, somebody knows somebody. That's awesome. So, yeah, TJ, I don't know. You want to do, maybe we could jump into your music. You play the drums
Yeah.
for lots of different bands. And from that documentary I was reading, Controlled Rhythm, you're a self-taught drummer, is about correct on that?
Yeah, so I took like 2 drum lessons when I lived in California, and was right around that time. My family found out we were moving out to the Boston area. Um, I'm a like military brat, so um, when I first moved here, I like couldn't go to school until I got a physical, but all the doctors were booked up for like 2 months. Um, so I basically just had a drum set in my room and just started drumming along to, like I'd bought the Green Day album after Lollapalooza. So I started drumming along to that because it's fairly easy. My sister got me into a lot of old, like, the 77 punk stuff, like the Sex Pistols and some of that stuff was fairly easy. Like the Ramones is very straightforward. It's just fast. And then, I got into I was always watching MTV and some like there was a band from Boston called Letters to Cleo that I had really gotten into. So I remember drumming along to that record a lot. And then being a military kid, I was just looking out for the other weirdos on bass and all the kind of I call them long hairs or whatever. We all, me and my sister, saw two other alternative looking kids one day, and none of us really knew how to play our instruments super well, but enough to start a band. And so we all kind of grew together that way. And, some of us kept going, some of us didn't.
Yeah. And so eventually you improved, obviously, and then you started playing with some of these other bands. These are all Boston area bands, obviously, right?
Yes, yeah. I've subbed in for some bands that have, come into town. Actually, I think it's only like two people that have come into town from out of town. But yeah, everything's been Boston based for sure.
Okay. And then how did the documentary come about? This is like 2012. This guy's name's Mike
Yeah, Mike Pecci,
Pesci. Mike Pesci. Okay.
like Joe Pesci. Yeah. So this all kind of like oddly ties into that Walter Sickert band too. I had worked at a record store in a mall in Watertown, Massachusetts, and that's actually where I met the people from Walter Sickert. Two of them were shopping in the store, but one of my coworkers ended up becoming one of my best friends, and we both lived in Watertown at the time, just like a couple of blocks away from each other. Um, and so I became friends with kind of her friend group. And this guy, Mike Pecci, he was just this brilliant photographer, and also was directing like music videos and stuff at the time. Um, and yeah, like he had like a business with another director. I believe they had a falling out. I'm not positive. I don't want to speak on that and cause any drama or anything. But anyway, he ended up moving into the house that was just a block away from me. And yeah, he just wanted to uh, do a documentary about me, which was just insanely flattering and awesome. Um, he also used me for like a model in a newspaper at one point, which was bizarre, but he like took these just awesome photos of yeah. But yeah, it was so cool working with him. It was cool that he like put it into a film festival. This guy's directed music videos for nationally known people, and I was just so flattered that he did it. Definitely have that imposter syndrome. I'm like, dude, I'm just your neighbor. I'm not in like any famous bands or anything. And but in a way too, he explained that it was almost like a digital business card for him. And him and his directing partner did documentaries on like 5 or 6 different people. Like they did one on like a boxer.
Yeah, I saw that.
They did one on like the singer of Converge. Yeah, Mike's awesome. He has his own podcast actually. Plug it here. It's called In Love with the Process. It's just all kind of inside baseball stuff for Hollywood. And he is about to direct a feature film being produced by Ridley Scott.
Nice.
He's doing well. He's a talented guy, and I'm glad it's paying off for him.
That's awesome. And then you said that kind of ties into this your involvement with Walter Sickert and the Army of Broken Toys. And I downloaded, listened to, and purchased the Blood Blooms album, which is their latest one.
Oh, nice.
Which you play the vibes, and I on that. You're credited with vibes on that album.
Yeah, I think I was just kind of hanging around the studio or maybe making weird noises or
I had to look up what that was. I'm like, I think I kind of know. It's like a xylophone maybe thing.
no, they meant actual like chill vibes, bro. Like,
Oh, okay.
I can't remember if I actually did touch anything in the studio for that one.
No, but what I found very interesting, TJ, was in the I guess the liner notes of Bandcamp of the album. There's this note from Edry.
Yep, yep. She's one of the performers in that band.
Yeah, and she writes, and I just want to get your thoughts and comments on this. She writes, 21 years ago, the RPM challenge kicked off as an artistic fever dream that is still raging. So they do this thing called the RPM challenge, the band. In February, it has been a month of absolute chaos, she says, creativity and major life moments. So basically, this challenge, which they've done every year, because I was going to ask you, well, how many albums they have? This is the 21st album. They've been doing it for 21 years. And they produce an album every February. And I have to say that Blood Blooms, man, that album and those two songs, Shadowrun Part 1, Shadowrun Part 2, those are really, really good songs. And the emotion and his voice, they're kind of scary though, too. I'm not gonna lie. It's like they have like these creepy sounds mixed in, like it reminds me of like My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult,
Oh, interesting.
their album Confessions of a Knife. It has like this, horror movie kind of creepy sounds you wouldn't want to hear in your house if you're by yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
But man, that is unbelievable. So I'm assuming you've been part of these RPM challenges over the years.
Yeah, I have. It's a lot of fun. I can explain it to people. There's basically a newspaper in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, or maybe they're just online now. But yeah, they challenge anyone that wants to participate in it just to write an album in the month of February. And the only rules are you got to start at February 1st and it's got to be done by the 28th. And then there's a deadline to turn it in. And I don't know if it's required or not, but people tend to make a spectacle about going to turn their record in, whether they just want to film it on their TikTok or whatever. But Walter is a just crazy eccentric visual artist as well as a musician. So he would always make these intense like dioramas with like, moving parts or lights on them or smeared in blood or like, and then every year there's a big kind of gathering in this theater where everyone can kind of hang out and exchange their albums. And one year I went, it was just like there were just instruments on the stage, and they're like, whoever wants to come up and play, just come play. So it was, I ran up and like sat in on drums for like 10 minutes on a song. And yeah, it's a cool way to just bring a lot of local musicians together, and you get everything from hip hop to metal to techno to just ambient noise to dad jam band stuff.
Yeah, it's a good way to get something done and get it out. And you got to ship it right by the end of the month.
Yeah, and earlier on, it was a really good way for us to demo stuff that would wind up on our more like professionally recorded things as well. Because we would only have like one night a week really to get together and jam. And most of those early ones, they were all just done home recording wise. So the quality's not that great. We also, that band, we did 2 different live musicals. So some of the like songs for those musicals came out of some of those jam sessions. And, you can hear like the early, just really stick figure drawing versions of them in those RPM challenges. And then you hear, what it evolved into later on the, real recorded versions.
So with those albums then that are like, I saw some on like Apple then, are those like refined RPM challenge recordings?
So lately, more recently, they've actually been going into like more professional recording studio settings to do the RPM challenges. And sometimes what'll happen too is Walter will take them home because they've been like engineered a little more than they can be, at their own house and, actually have like a decent sound engineer and things like that. Walter will take it home and kind of chop it up or remix it the way he sees fit, or put overdubs on at home.
Yeah, he classifies the band's sound as steam crunk, which I looked that up, and it's like steam, it's kind of like steampunk, sci-fi fashion, a lot of Victorian era imagery, and then the crunk part is like rowdy, high energy stuff. So a lot of the videos I noticed were like, people in Victorian type clothing and stuff like that. They're kind of trippy.
We were a band very big on theatrics, and we never set out to be a quote unquote steampunk band, but there's a huge fandom for that stuff. And we ended up headlining a bunch of conventions and things like that, which was just awesome. I'd never felt so famous in my life sometimes playing at those things. And yeah, I mean, it was interesting to walk around and see everyone's costume. Like some of these steampunk people, like really would have like full animatronics like walking around with them that are powered by steam. Yeah, I had some of the like most fun live performances of my life. There's another band from Boston that would join us a lot called Emperor Norton's Stationary Marching Band, and they're like a steampunk marching band. More like actually I'd say they're more like radical like protest kind of stuff too, but like I would join them sometimes for like random performances at those conventions, and it just always got buck wild and awesome.
That sounds really cool. And I guess also on the liner notes of this album, Blood Blooms, there's a big project they're working on. It's like they said it's a nod to an upcoming project that we cannot fully reveal for many months, but suffice it to say it's big. So there must be some part of that album that's going to fold into this project.
They have announced it. Walter is directing a film. Trailer is out on like Sangoria. It's going to be like a horror sci-fi film. They're going to kill me because I cannot remember the name of it. But yeah, they've been hard at work on this for, I think it's been in production for the last year or so. They've been pretty hush-hush about it.
Well, we can link to it in the show notes. And you gave me like some sample bands that you've played with, like the Martyrs was one of them, and the Struggle Sessions is the album.
Uh-huh.
And that's like a hardcore punk band 2020 that was released.
Yep.
And then they're just kind of showing the variety of what you play. Then this Boys Life band, Tomorrow the World.
Yeah, that's a project by a guy that was in a band called Boys Life in Boston. It was like a rock opera that he did.
Yeah, is this guy John Surratt?
Surratt, yeah.
Surratt? I don't know my French here.
It's all
John Surratt. But yeah, then that's like more where there's a couple of different vocalists, a female.
Yeah.
Some saxophone.
Yeah, actually the sax player on that was Amy Winehouse, sax player.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a guy named Dave Minahan on that record who also engineered and produced it. He's been in The Replacements.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a cool project to be invited to be on. I'm only on like 3 or 4 tracks, like, because he tried to get as many local musicians as he could involved, and that was an incredibly fun thing to play. And his band, Boys Life, has like kind of a cult following. They were like a teenage punk band back in like the early 80s, late 70s, and when we did that thing live, that was like the first time they had reformed in years, so it was like a packed house, and that was super cool.
There's a lot of catchy songs on that album.
Yeah, I love it. It's just a good fun rock and roll record.
Are you drumming for anybody currently, TJ, at the moment?
Right now, Martyrs is like technically still together, but we haven't really played together in a couple of years. It's life, kids and things like that. The band Drop Air I sent you, we are kind of moving in a different direction, forming a new project at the moment, doing some writing right now. And that's about it for the time being. I always have my eyes and ears open for somebody looking for something to do.
Yeah, you never know, right?
Yeah, there's a local band here called Sapling who are really good, and two of the members of that band live together and kind of have their own recording studio in their basement and everything. So I'm hoping I've been talking to them just about making some weirdo noise type music.
Yeah, the stuff I listened to was fantastic, and the genres, like I said, were hugely varied. Well, as we wrap up on time here, TJ, there's one last thing you put down. You read erotic fan fiction.
Yeah.
And I looked at some of the stuff, and it's pretty wild. They're pretty erotic for sure. So how does that work?
It's a little bit of a story here. The band Walter Sickert and the Army of Broken Toys. When we were performing around Boston, we would often have like burlesque dancers on stage with us, like circus performers, things like that. And so I got pretty close with a lot of people in the local like burlesque and cosplay scenes and stuff like that. And a person that is a producer that puts on, produces different shows. For a while, they were posting these really raunchy messages that men were sending her on dating apps that were just like horrific. And I just started going online and making videos of them with like the Masterpiece Theater music in the background and just reading them very like dramatically. Like, I don't want to, repeat some of the stuff on here, but, I tried to make it look like trashy and classy. Like I'd get a wine glass and like pour a little bit of Jägermeister in it and like sip it. And meanwhile, I'm living in this punk house with a messy room. And so when they started producing shows that were themed more to like nerd culture and things like that. Now, this person's also a writer as well and involved in different fandoms and stuff. So they started putting on these shows and just having me as like a variety guest of reading this erotic fan fiction that they wrote. And the thing is like, I've done voiceover work before and usually read the script to death before I would go up unprepared. I would just read it right off the paper, right on stage in front of people. And some of this stuff was raunchy. And, some of them were themed to like animes, and I didn't know the names of the characters or anything. And so over the years, the first time I did it, I was kind of nervous, reserved, everything. And then, the next year, the applause was a little louder for me and started turning into this kind of like self-deprecating comedy act. What am I doing here? Somebody's sending me drinks, blah, blah, blah. And, by the time that the last one they did, it's like I was almost like a headliner on this thing. Like, well, it's crazy that people want to see this, out of shape middle-aged guy come up and read all this disgusting stuff when there's nudity on stage. And that's, I'll always thank that person too, because I was actually starting to get more known for that than being like a local musician. Like there were times I was at the grocery store and they'd be like, "Oh my God, you're the erotic fan fiction guy." So yeah, that's always been a blast. Yeah, I think they moved to New York, but they are planning on putting on a Lord of the Rings themed burlesque show soon. And, asked me if I might be available to reprise my role. So I'm hoping I get to do that again just for old time's sake.
Quite a niche you got there, for sure. All right, TJ. Well, yeah, is there anything else you might like to plug or talk about?
Yeah, I just always want to plug my friends. Like everyone should definitely follow Walter Sickert and the Army of Broken Toys. They're a fun band that just won't stop. Gained members, lost members over the years, but I feel like everyone's in that band is a good judge of character. So there's always somebody cool hanging out in that band. You never know what you're gonna get with them. Yeah, it's awesome. I definitely recommend seeing them live if they're ever in your area. Definitely keep an Mike Pecci for his film that should be coming out. Everyone should just do a deep dive on the Boston music scene. There are just so many incredible bands coming out of Boston right now who, we're all older and have careers and we'll probably never get radio play anywhere. But yeah, if anyone wants to hit me up, you can hit me up on my Instagram. It's just TJ Braken Playton, and I'd be happy to just nerd out about music with you.
Cool. Or go to a show, right?
Oh yeah, I'm at tons of shows. If you are listening to this and live in Boston and think I might be at a show you're at, hit me up. I'd be happy to have a drink, give you a high five with it or something.
Cool. Yeah, this has been great, TJ. I really appreciate you coming on, seeing them live, and sharing, I guess, just a handful of stories. Like you said, we could probably go on for hours.
Yeah, if you ever want a part 2, I'm around, man.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you so much.
That's a wrap for our show. I want to thank today's guests for sharing their concert stories with us. Make sure to check out our show notes at seeingthemlive.com for links to websites, photos, and other artifacts mentioned in the show. I also want to thank my producer, Doug Florzak. The theme music for the show was composed by Doug and is featured on his album, Flagstone. If you have a concert story you'd like to share on our podcast, please visit our website and click on Become a Guest in the main menu. Then fill out the form and click the Submit button. If you seem like a good fit for the show, we'll contact you via email. I guess it's time to head for the exits. We'll see you next time on Seeing Them Live.